Hey guys, it's your big sister Nikki, and today we're going to talk about periods. Whether it's your first time getting your period, or you're kind of expecting it to come soon, or you're just a guy trying to be supportive towards maybe your sister, your mom, or a girlfriend. Maybe you're in a long-term relationship or you're living with someone. I'm going to give you a few details on what we're kind of going through, what to expect, how to survive that, and how you can help and support other people, other women that are going through this. And I just want to let you know, if this is your first time having a period, I know it can be so scary, especially if you have nobody to kind of help you through it. Don't worry, I'm here for you. And there's nothing to be ashamed of or scared of. Women have been going through this for millennia, and we're all here for you. This is just a natural part of growing into becoming a woman, and it's something that should be celebrated. I don't see it as celebrated, especially when I was younger, but I see nowadays they do period cakes or little period parties, and I just think that's so awesome. It's a great way to celebrate becoming a woman, and you should take the time to celebrate yourself in whatever form that may be. Before I start, I do want to note I am not a doctor, so if you ever have any concerns or maybe an erratic period or just something that you think may not be normal, please reach out and see a medical profession. But let's start with what is a period. So when your body is transitioning to being able to make babies, it's going to produce an egg, and after each month, that egg is going to drop and you'll have the shedding of your uterus lining, and that's what causes the blood in your period. When that blood kind of clots, it can cause pain, which is the cramp part of that. And then there's also hormonal feelings that you may feel in your chest, sometimes your underarms, and just usually where you have hormonal glands. Sometimes it may be your knees or your back. And again, it just depends on your experience. Each person has a different type of flow, and I'll kind of cover this more as I go throughout. But they are designated by a light, a regular, a light, a regular, a heavy flow, and a super flow. I'm going to go over the different types of protection that there are available and a little bit of price comparison at some different stores. First, I'm going to start off with tampons. So these are tampons. This is a box of assorted tampons. You'll see on the other side, you have your light, regular, and your supers. And then next, I have these pad with wings. This is the Walgreens variety, so it was a little bit cheaper. And they usually have different size, but at the store they only had the size 4. And next we have panty liners. So these are great for if you haven't quite started your period yet, you might have a little bit of spotting, and I'll go into that. Or if you have a tampon, these are great for just helping with any kind of leak control and keeping things just nice and clean down there. For my price comparison, I'm just going to use this box of Tampax Pearl Variety Pack. So when I went to a few different stores, this cost me $11.99 at Walgreens. I noticed at my grocery store it was a little bit cheaper. I have a video and it says it was about $10.29. And then I even noticed at Target, my grocery store is a little bit not a big box store, but I did go to Target and I found that everything there was about $1, $2 less than my other grocery store that I usually go to. That being said, there were some cheaper alternatives at Dollar Tree, but they didn't have tampons. They only had your panty liners and your pads available, and that's just a great alternative because the price of these can add up really quickly. This is a box of 34, and they come in different amounts. So I believe it's usually about a box of 12, and they can get bigger or smaller from there. I mentioned a few times the term irregular period, and I just want to clarify what that means. Once you start getting your period, you'll notice it may last 4 to 7 days. It may last a little bit longer, a little bit shorter. It just depends on you. And uh, let's say you get it every 3.5 weeks, every waxing moon. And then after a while, it's one time it comes 5 weeks after, and then 2 weeks after that, or maybe you had bleeding for 2 weeks. I know there are records of women who have gone on to have periods much longer than that. And that's what I mean by irregular period. And just a great way to keep track of that information is using apps. I know I used a period tracker, and you can find them for free everywhere, or you can just write it in your calendar if you don't really want to keep up with that. And that's just a great way to keep track of that information, because inevitably when you go to the doctor, the first thing they're going to ask you was, what was the last day of your last period? Or have you started your period if you haven't yet? So just having that information available is just much easier, because they're going to bug you about it, and it's better to know than to kind of guess around. So this is a panty liner. It's not used as a form of protection for a period. It's more to help in case you have spotting, maybe before you started your period. I just picked up a box from Walgreens, and it was $5.99. And I've used the term spotting, so I've made a little water and food coloring. This isn't the consistency of what your period would be like, but it's just kind of a visual to help you understand what spotting might be like. I know from personally, there wasn't there weren't women in my life for me to ask. I did have one moment with my birth mom where I asked her if I had started my period because I had had spotting, and she laughed and said, "You'll know when it happens." I didn't. I didn't know what she meant. It wasn't helpful. I kind of wish she had just explained it more to me. So I'm going to explain what spotting is, and I'm going to kind of help you understand what it's like when you have had a real period. So you might have like a little bit of, this is just food coloring and water, but you might have a little bit of drops of blood that may happen before you actually get your period. I think I had mine maybe a few months before I actually had that. And that's why panty liners are just good. Maybe you're having discomfort and you think you may get your period. It may not quite come yet, but this just kind of helps prevent. It's preventative for keeping clean underwear and whatnot. It's also good for when you're wearing a tampon in case it may be the wrong size. You may have a little bit of a heavy flow that day. It just kind of helps to keep everything clean down there. So again, this isn't a period amount. This is just spotting. Now, inevitably, you're going to have a stain. So the best way to handle that is to use cold water. It really helps to get the majority of the blood out. And then I also use a Calgon. This is great for any kind of stain removal. It helps with colors. It helps with whites, especially. It just helps a lot to get that out in the wash. There are other ways you can find online, but this is just what works for me. Next, we have pads, and they come wrapped up in this little plastic, and it comes up with a little tab, and they just open up like that, a little bit louder, and it looks like this. Here are your wings, and it's another little sticky part. It just comes off, and you can toss that in the trash. And you're usually going to want to wrap this around your underwear to keep them in place. This is also sticky as well. I'm not going to remove it. I'm just going to keep it on there for, we're going to pretend that's our underwear. So we've placed it in our underwear, and then we're going to wrap the sides down, keep it in place. And there we go. And this is a size 4. It says that they have different sizes, but I didn't see any in the store to grab. It was just a one size kind of pick, I guess, from the manager. This can happen. Sometimes you just have to let the manager know you're looking for a specific type, and they can get it into their store. So once we have that in, you're good to go. This is a little bit easier than having to deal with a tampon. And I know some religions don't permit the use of tampon, so this is a great alternative. Again, I'm going to use my red food coloring and my water, just water and food coloring, to kind of simulate how much to expect when you're having your period. And again, this ranges from whether or not you have a light flow, a regular flow, a heavy flow, or a super flow. And each one can accommodate differently, each pad and each tampon. And it's just figuring out what works for you. Sometimes your first day can be a little bit heavier than the rest. You may just be heavy all the way through. Even though the consistency is not going to be like water and food coloring, the quantity here is it helps you get a little bit of a better idea of how much to expect. I know I was a little bit in shock the first time just because I didn't have anybody to ask. I didn't know if I was dying. I had no idea. So again, I'm using food coloring and water. The consistency is not the same. This is just a visual of the quantity. But this is about what you would kind of expect if you were having your period. The consistency is a little bit thicker. It's not like the blood that comes from your veins. Like if you cut yourself, it's a little bit gloopier. I don't want to get into too much detail and be too graphic about it, but I think the visual really helps you to understand what to expect. And again, I would say I probably have like a regular flow, and this is about a regular amount. So you may have more or you may have less, and it's just keeping track of what kind of flow and what kind of periods you're having. To dispose of a pad, you're just going to peel it out of your underwear. And you can also use the plastic liner that comes from the new one to kind of wrap that up like a little package almost, a little surprise. Hopefully no one opens it. So you just close it up in there, and you can use the wings to kind of stick around the side so it helps you. And that way you can dispose of it discreetly, because you really don't want to leave a nasty surprise for somebody to open up. And you definitely do not want to flush this down and ruin the plumbing. So I have 3 different sizes of tampons for comparison. We have a light, the regular, and the super. And you'll notice they're not too much different in size. It's more just their absorption capabilities. So this is less than 6 grams. This is 6 to 9, irregular. And this is 9 to 12. And I know we're not going to know, like looking how much we're going to need. It really just is kind of a learning curve. I know for my first time, I couldn't tell you which one I need. I will say that when you're trying to figure out which one to use, you never want to use one that's too big. That can lead to toxic shock syndrome. So you really want to find the one that's close to the amount of grams that you're producing. So if you have maybe a heavier period on the first day, you may need a regular or a super, and then you might have to go down to a regular or a light as days go by. So it's just figuring out what works for you and keeping your body safe. So here I have a box of tampons. These are Tampax Active Pearl, and they have a motion fit, which just kind of means that it's good for athletics. Maybe you're running, or you're still in school and you're a little bit more active throughout the day. At the bottom right here, you'll see what kind of flow it's good for. This is a light. And then right here it says unscented, and that's just a preference. There are scented ones and unscented. On the side of the box, there's a little bit more detail on what to expect from each different size and what that is good for. And if you're just getting your period, I definitely recommend getting a variety pack, so that way you can just use what you need and kind of adjust to the situation. Inside every box of tampons is a little pamphlet. And this is a little bit different from the first time I've had my period, but inside there's a little diagram to kind of help, and then there's instructions as well. So in case this is your first time, I definitely recommend reading this because there's a lot of information, just how that specific brand works. So this one is an active, so it has a motion fit protection, which just means if you're moving around a lot with athletics, it's more likely to stay in place. So you just get a box full of these. So let's open it up. Don't even worry about the sound. I know when I was younger, I used to worry so much about the noise of the wrapper being opened in the restroom. No one cares. So specifically, this one says you have to pull this little applicator out a little bit, and then after insertion, you just push down the applicator, and it should come out just like that. And you want to make sure that this string stays out, because that's how you're going to remove it essentially. As you can see, it absorbed pretty quickly. Now, it's not going to absorb that quickly when you're using it. This is just water, and that's why it acted so quickly. And it's good for up to 8 hours. A huge warning, you don't want to go over 8 hours because it can produce toxic shock syndrome. And it can be extremely dangerous for you and your body. You could end up in the hospital, so you just want to always keep aware of how long you've kept that in. When you are ready to remove the tampon, you're just going to pull on the cord and it will remove quite easily. I do want to note that you never want to flush that down the toilet, whether or not there are signs posted. That's very bad for the plumbing system, and it can cause damage, especially if it's at your house. It's going to be embarrassing when it clogs the toilet and they come to unclog it and there's what looks to be a dead rat. So usually the best way to handle that is just get some toilet paper, and you're going to wrap it up and try to dispose of it discreetly in the trash. I do want to talk about a few warnings. I mentioned earlier about not wanting to leave a tampon in for too long. This is a maximum of 8 hours because you can get toxic shock syndrome, and it can be very serious. Another problem that may happen, your uterus is a closed area, so putting a tampon in is not going to just disappear. But I have heard of women having to go to the emergency room because they've forgotten and they've inserted another one, and they have to have them removed by a doctor or professional. So just try to keep a reminder, whether it's making a little note or texting somebody. I know when you're first starting, it can be kind of nerve-wracking and your mind's kind of scrambled. So just try to do what works best for you to just kind of help those from happening. So some alternatives to disposable tampons and pads are reusable menstrual cups. They kind of look like this. And also reusable pads. Using a diva cup is or a menstrual cup, the diva cup, is pretty easy. It comes with its own little discreet bag. I'd advise you to get a little wet just so it's easier for insertion. But what you're going to do is kind of fold it up like that. And you're going to squat to try and get into a comfortable position, kind of like a tampon. And once it's inserted, it just pops right open. This is also for about up to 8 hours, and it's good if it works for you. I personally use these, but I can see where in an office space or maybe at school it's not as pleasant, or you may need something a little bit more discreet because you can't really go to the sink to rinse this off afterwards when you're disposing of the menstruation. And the same thing with a pad. Like this might work for you, it may not. There's no right answer, it just is what works for you. When you're trying to remove a diva cup, I hear a lot of things online on women struggling to remove it the first time because there's not a long cord with it. It's very short. So my best advice is to kind of simulate like you're trying to poop. um, this can happen. This can happen when you're trying to go number two. Your tampon can come out, or if you sneeze too hard, it could come out. So, um, but my best suggestion is if you can't quite reach it, try simulating going number two, and that should kind of push it out to where it's easily removable. So, from my understanding, cramps are when there is clotting of the blood. So, usually heat really helps to kind of combat those painful moments. Um, I know personally for me, I get them the day before and the first day of, and that might be different for you. You may get them the entire time, you may not get them at all. So, I'm just going to go over a few ways to kind of combat that and handle that pain. There are different types of heating pads. There are water ones, which I had originally. You just put hot water in it and then you can wrap it in a towel if it's too hot and place it on your lower abdomen to kind of alleviate any uh, cramps that you may be having. There are electric ones. I personally just use an old sock full of rice, and I think I microwave it for about a minute and a half, maybe 2 minutes, and it just works for me. It's just very pliable, easy to kind of work with for me, and I can lay on it. And I have a few of these, so I can use them on my lower back, on my lower abdomen. Um, Maybe my chest is hurting. It's what works for me. So you can find different methods and try different ones and see what worked for you. Whether it's your first time or you're a veteran, I definitely recommend having a little period kit. And this is just a little bag that I have that has a few essentials that I think are great for an emergency, especially if you're still in school. You never know when these things are gonna hit, and it's not like you can leave and go take care of it. I know when I was in school, they would gatekeep the bathroom a lot, so um, it was just a horrible experience for me. So having a little kit to kind of keep my mind at ease was always just a great way to kind of get through a traumatic time. Inside my kit, I have an extra pair of underwear. I have a reusable pad or diva cup, just depending on my situation, and maybe that's a tampon or a pad or a panty liner as well. I definitely recommend having all three. Whether or not you use them, there may be somebody out there that may need that, and you can assist them. And I just think being prepared is great. I also love this Tiger Balm. It's great for muscle cramps, and a lot of times I can feel it in my back, sometimes my legs, and it just works for me. I also have these Japanese, um, they're kind of like icy hot patches. So the icy hot works just as fine, and these are very similar. You'll find something that works for you. I also have a little bit of perfume. This is a roll-on perfume. It's just one of my favorite scents, and this one is a little spray. And it's just good to have that in case you're feeling a little self-conscious about that time. I know um, hormonally you can um, experience different smells, so it's just nice to kind of have that. I don't have any with me right now, but I think having maybe a disposable a wet wipe would be great to kind of help you refresh in case you're stuck at the office or you're just stuck at school. And keeping an extra box of tampons, pads, whatever works for you in your car or in your desk or your locker, your backpack is just a great way to always have those with you and always be prepared, because if it's your first couple of times, they can be a little bit erratic. Maybe you're not used to when they're coming. And I think it took me quite a while to kind of figure out when I could figure out when they were coming before they came. So that's just a great way to be prepared, and then also help your friends in case they're unprepared. I hope that information was helpful. If you guys want to talk about your first period or just celebrate it, um, just leave a comment below. I will definitely reach out. And just remember, your big sister Nikki's always here for you. All right. I love you guys. Bye.